to Final Fantasy III. No, the real Final Fantasy III, released in 1990 for the original NES. This one has a bit of a muddy release in the West. Originally, it was only released in Japan. They did plan to translate it, but with the SNES actually releasing a few months after this game released, they decided to put all their manpower into understanding the new technology, and therefore, the English version was scrapped. 16 years later, it would finally be released in other countries on the Nintendo DS with a new 3D art style and some gameplay balancing changes, which would be how every future release of the game until 2021 with the Pixel remasters. Now, there are actually some significant changes on the surface between the two versions. Final Fantasy 3DS actually tries to do something with the story. Sorta. Look, it tries to give more of a backstory to the four main characters. You meet them throughout the game, they have all sorts of motives, and then the rest of the game largely plays out the same. The original 2D version just has 4 kids going into a cave. Here's how you play. Okay, you start the game. That's all there is to it. Now, which version is best? It's kind of up to you. I don't really think there is a wrong way to play here. The gameplay for Final Fantasy III is still completely turn-based, but has a lot of new unique choices that really makes this game customizable. Spell charges from the original game is back, but instead of choosing your classes from the beginning or leveling up your characters throughout your battles, you get to choose and switch jobs whenever you want. And there are 23 jobs with 14,950 different party combinations. Every job has special commands such as steal, jump, or summon. These jobs unlock over time, with each of the 4 crystals giving you more jobs and side quests giving you even more jobs. There are a few problems with the jobs, however. With so many different jobs, there are going to be some that are really bad and some that are just better in every way. There is also specific boss fights that expect you to use certain jobs, which means you die, switch jobs, you grind out those jobs, you beat the boss, and you go back to a preferred job. There's also specific moments in the story where you have to turn yourself mini or into a frog to progress, which means you will always need to have a mage, because when you are mini, your physical damage will be 1 and the damage you take will be increased. It's a cool little twist, but understandably kind of annoying. New to the series is formations, where you can place some of your characters such as mages in the back of the row, and in the back of the row they take less damage and do less physical damage, but every once in a while you will get back attacked and the rows will flip-flop because of this. The mages aren't necessarily safe in the back either. This builds off the preemptive strike and the ambush from the second game. A welcome addition. Hidden pathways return from the second game, but the dumb empty room in dungeons does not. However, some of the hidden pathways have to be unlocked by finding a secret switch somewhere in the room. It can be sort of annoying, but in the Pixel remaster you get to see the whole area of the minimap, so you'll have an idea where there is a path somewhere. So, the story. You would think that after Final Fantasy II had a huge focus on story and world building, that it'd really start to have some good narratives here in a series that is known for excellent, compelling, and admittedly overcomplicated stories. But no, we're back to a Final Fantasy I-like story. I mean, there's some plot sequences here, but nothing really super deep. Basically, there are 4 orphans chosen by the crystal to become the Warriors of Light. These 4 Warriors of Light go to each town and village in the game, helping out the town folk and what their major problems are. Admittedly, some of these are pretty clever. The first town you get into, for example, everyone is invisible. You can only see their outlines, but they can still talk. They tell you about the curse and you have to go and beat the guy to get the curse. The problem with the story in this game is that it almost feels episodic instead of one coherent storyline. Because of this, everything just kind of feels disjointed at times. The elements that happen in the story are indeed pretty cool, but almost none of them actually matter to the actual story. Throughout these adventures, you will sometimes come across a character that will actually join you and your party. They essentially become a 5th party member, at least in the 3DS version. In the 2DS version, I don't believe they do anything. But in the 3D version, they will sometimes actually help you. The only problem with this is that it's completely random. It's a little annoying. I'm glad it's there, but it is annoying. But the story pretty much takes a backseat to the gameplay here, at least until the very end, where you kind of get a bunch of lore just dropped on you at once. And then you go to the Crystal Tower. The Crystal Tower might be the worst thing in the Final Fantasy games. It is really difficult. You can't save the game inside the tower, it's extremely long, and you actually technically lose to what the big bad guy is supposed to be. But then all the characters that you met along your adventures, including those who sacrifice themselves by jumping into a furnace or something, revive you? And then you beat Zond, who I think is how you pronounce the final villain's name, just to learn that there was something even worse. A literal cloud! Now there's a bunch of optional bosses here, and if you beat them all, you actually cut the final boss's health in half by having the Warriors of Dark, apparently, kamikaze themselves into it. So you beat the game, all is well in the world now. The best thing about the narrative is progressing to the actual world map itself. The world is massive. You got the world you start on, you got another whole world below you, you got a whole ocean floor to explore, plenty of dungeons, and in the DS version, there's some added content. I don't really know how they managed to fit this game on a single NES cartridge actually. Airships really take a focus this time too. The airships in this game ram rocks, jump over mountains, become a submarine. It's definitely the most fun to actually explore around the map so far in the series. Graphics are a little weird though, especially on the 3D version. But if you're into this art style, then I guess more power to you. The Pixar remaster is probably where I would go to for the 2D version. It just looks stunning and the music does get an uplift here. Although the music in general to me is kind of a step down. Maybe it's because this game is so lighthearted, but nothing really here stands out to me. Don't get me wrong, none of these games have a bad soundtrack, but I'd argue that this one is really not up to par with some other games. It's kind of a hard game to pin down. The gameplay mechanics are great, but the story just really makes it hard to get into. Overall though, I'm going to give it a final score of a 6.9 out of 10. If you're more into the stories of Final Fantasy than the gameplay, then I'd probably stay clear of this one. The actual gameplay and switching between jobs is a blast. Unfortunately for at least Final Fantasy 3, another game coming up here soon does the exact same thing, but I would say better, and has a slightly better story, even though it's about just as bonkers as jumping into a furnace to save the world. Well, that's gonna do it for this Final Fantasy 3 review. This took a little longer than expected to get out there, but there are a bunch more reviews upcoming on the channel, so stand by for that. Thank you for watching. Like the video if you haven't already, subscribe for more content, comment down below, and check the description for links such as the Discord.